You are now listening to Talk Your Jits podcast.
Welcome back to the Talk Your Jits podcast. This podcast is, as the name implies, all about jiu-jitsu. I'm your host, Lamar Smith, and today's guest is a brown belt who trains at Track BJJ, located in Coon Rapids, Minnesota. Ladies and gentlemen, Nick Rahn.
What's up, man?
What's happening?
How's it going? Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Man, the pleasure is all mine, man. Nothing like, getting a chance to sit down and talk about jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's seems to be the one thing I talk about the most, and I think people are getting sick of it. So,
yeah, I know, right? I know
I'm
that
never gonna stop though.
Never. But yeah, man, let's get the ball rolling. If you want to introduce yourself again, by all means, and let's hear your jiu-jitsu journey.
Yeah, man. My name is Nick Rahn. I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota. Grew up on the east side and joined the Air Force in 2006 to 2012. Got out, was a 911 dispatcher for the Minnesota State Patrol for 8 years, and then started Warriors Next Adventure 501c3 back in April of 2019. We help vets with PTSD and suicide prevention. I run a 24/7 crisis line for veterans. They can call whenever they need to. We've had 125 calls in our crisis line. They're all still alive, so pretty damn good at what I do.
Nice.
We have a bunch of different programs. We have dirt track racing, where we teach veterans how to work on race cars, but they also get to race, right? No practice, though. It's just you get out there and you run your first race. So hopefully you can drive a stick. And then we have a mountain climbing program. I'm also a stand-up comedian, so we have a lot of different stuff with that. And April 1st, I'm opening up a cannabis dispensary, and we're going to have a fully functional comedy club in there as well. So we're going to be using that comedy club for the nonprofit as well. And the nonprofit will also have an office within this building too, because it's so big. We don't need 2,800 square feet for a dispensary. So now we can start utilizing this space for the nonprofit as well. And then we also have a jiu-jitsu program. We partner with We to 5 Foundation. Their organization where if you're 80% or more disabled through the VA, you get a full year scholarship of jiu-jitsu. So you can literally train for a full year for free. And then we cover the below 80% aspect because we try to partner with other organizations. So I'm not trying to step on their toes. So any veteran that's below 80, what we do is we pay for their first month and we pay for their first gi for them. And
nice.
And the reason why I brought jiu-jitsu into the organization is just because jiu-jitsu has been literally the best thing that's ever happened. Unfortunately, I had a pretty messed up childhood. I was abused by my stepdad consistently for about 2 to 3 years. He would beat the living shit out of me and my mom, and got to the point where it was so severe where we had like an emergency phone in the basement because the guy would just lose his shit all the time. And I was 9 years old. So I grew up, just constantly getting my ass kicked. And when I joined the military, I still had that mindset of, everyone hates me. I'm a loser. I'm not good enough. And I had no self-confidence when I first joined the military. And on my first deployment in Qatar, now for the veterans out there, deployment, I was in Qatar, which I tell people all the time, it was pretty rough, man, because like you don't know how hard it is to walk 1.5 miles to the gym and you go to the Dairy Queen and they're out of mint ice cream. That shit's rough, man.
Not the mint ice cream.
There's literally a Dairy Queen in the gym. There was a Chili's by the poolside. You had to get out of the water and knock on the window to get your food. It was obnoxious, man.
Crazy.
But anyway, on that first deployment, again, I still had these concepts of I'm a loser, I'm worthless, I never amount to anything. These words were beaten into me by a grown man, as a child. So you believe what you're told when you're a kid.
Right.
So about a month or two into the deployment, one of my squad leaders realized that they thought I was depressed, which I probably was. I just didn't realize it. Because after work, I would just go straight to my room and I would just play video games on my computer because I thought everyone hated me, and they would pick on me all the fucking time. Down the road, I figured out that we were friends. That's just how people in the military treated each other. We pick on the weak ones to make them strong.
Right.
And, they said like, listen, you're not allowed to go to your room until 9 o'clock. So every day after shift, I'd get off at 3 or 4, and I was not allowed to go to my room unless it was changing into like PT gear or something. So I would go to under the pool hall and sit there and play pool, and I hated it. I was bored. I'd go play video games at the there's an MWR there. We could play like Call of Duty. Call of Duty was big back then. And one day, a staff sergeant in the Army, we were talking and he mentioned jiu-jitsu. I'm like, what the hell is jiu-jitsu? He's like, have you ever seen the UFC? I'm like, I mean, I've heard of it. So he gives me a copy of UFC 1-5. And
Wow.
I'm watching Hoist Gracie just kick the living shit out of all these guys that are bigger than him. And I'm like, dude, this is awesome. Like, I want to try it. So I go to my first class and just get the shit kicked out of me. It was bad, dude. Like we didn't have gis out there, so it was all no gi. So the first 7 years of my career, I only trained no gi. So anyway, we go in there and I just get my ass kicked, and I was just so frustrated, and I'm just like, man, fuck this. I don't want to do this anymore. And the next day he sees me, he's like, hey man, tomorrow night we're doing it again. I'm like, I don't want to do this. He's like, no, we got 2 other guys coming. You should show up. I'm like, all right. So I go in there and just get my ass kicked again. And this continues for about 3 months. But we got to the point where we were training 5 days a week because there's nothing else to do in deployments. So eventually got to the point where I started to get addicted to it because I sucked at it. And I've never been the kind of guy that's just been naturally good at something. The only thing I've ever been naturally good at in the military, I was a 50 cal gunner. So shooting machine guns, like I was super proficient. The machine itself just made sense to me. And in 2008, I won the Yakima Shooting Center Top Gunner drill, where it's like you have, I think it's like 20 targets up to 2,000 meters. And I set the record for the military, right? That's Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines. I had the fastest times, and I was the only one to hit all the targets. So I literally set the record as a 50 cal gunner. So that's the one thing I've ever been really good at. And everything else, I suck. And I get to that point where it irritates me that I'm not good at something. So I have to keep doing it until I get proficient in it. And so by the time that deployment was over, I was getting to the point where I was tapping blue belts. And I was just like, okay, this is fucking awesome. I get back from that deployment. I was only home for 3 months and I didn't even go back to work. They put me right on another deployment. So I go to Iraq in 2008. This was in either March or April of 2008. I don't really remember. And we get out there and they have jiu-jitsu mats in the gym. And so I asked a couple of the guys in the squad, I was like, hey, do you guys want to train jiu-jitsu instead of do PT? Because we had to go do PT every day. Whether it's lifting weights, running, whatever. And so I decided I'm going to start a jiu-jitsu club. And I'm some white belt that's trained for 3 months. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So it was just a bunch of guys just rolling. Now in the Air Force, we take the Modern Army Combatives, which is like, if you get proficient at the Modern Army Combatives, you're as proficient as a new white belt, essentially. So it's not good stuff. So we were just rolling every day for 6 months. And it got to the point where more and more people started showing up, and we just continued to get better as we kept rolling. And we only knew arm bars, and rear naked chokes. That's all we really knew. And so that's pretty much all we did. And it got to the point where I got so good at arm bars, because that's all I knew how to do, where that just kind of became my bread and butter. I mean, even now as a brown belt, I've had 103 jiu-jitsu matches, and I think I have over 50 wins via submission with arm bars, where it's just like
Nice.
that basics, right? There's a reason why a lot of professionals win with basic submissions, is because that's the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu. And if you understand those fundamentals, it just makes everything so much easier. So 2008, towards the end of that deployment, I started boxing as well. And I did my first boxing match at Friday Night Fights in Iraq. And there was like 10,000 people there, man. It was wild. And I was supposed to fight a guy that was boxing for like a month and a half. I had only been boxing for a month. And I was like, fuck it, I'll take a fight. So he backs out. I ended up fighting a guy that had been boxing for 3 years. I beat the brakes off this guy the first round, right?
Wow. Nice.
But as a new fighter, I blew my tank, right? I gave 100%. And there were only 3-minute rounds, I think. It was 3 3-minute rounds. So that second round I come in, he just destroyed me. I'm sitting there, I couldn't bring my hands up. I'm just getting hit. I threw maybe 5 punches, it was bad. And then the third round comes out, he breaks my nose, just beats the living shit out of me. But I lost by decision, so I made it to the end. And I'm like, man, I like jujitsu so much better. Not getting hit in the face. Like, so I get back from that deployment, and this was early 2009, and I started training jujitsu at a local gym. And I trained for about 2 months. Then I went out and did a Naga tournament out in Virginia. I was stationed in Goldsboro, North Carolina. So I go to Virginia, I do a tournament, and I win my first match via armbar in like a minute and 10 seconds. I'm like, I'm the greatest jujitsu guy in the world, right? And then I go out my next match and I lose in like 15 seconds. I'm like, I'm fucking pissed. So I go online and I look at Naga, and there's another tournament in Charlotte the next week. So I'm like, you know what? I'm pissed. Like I'm not gonna lose again, damn it. So I go out to Charlotte and I win 4 matches and I get first place and I win my Naga sword. And if I wasn't hooked already, that got me sunk in a lot deeper because I was like, okay, I'm actually not terrible at this. So I kept training, and during that year, I found out that there was a MMA fight in October of 2009 called the Carolina Crown 2. It was at the RBC Center where the Carolina Hurricanes play hockey. So I'm like, fuck it, I want to do an MMA fight. And so I start training Muay Thai, doing MMA, MMA sparring, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, and then a little bit of judo. And jiu-jitsu was always my highlight because it just made more sense to me. And striking was pretty good for me because I'm 6'2", and at the time in the military I was only about 165, 170 pounds. So I was a skinny little kid, man. And so I fought at 155 pounds. So I'm sitting in there cutting weight in the gym on base, and I'm wearing sweatpants, sweatshirt, and I'm just like doing jumping jacks, and these guys are looking at me like, who's this fucking moron? What is he doing? I was like, I gotta cut weight, man. I gotta lose 10 pounds. I gotta lose 10 pounds. So I get out to the RBC Center, and I fought a Marine from Camp Lejeune, and I decided I'm gonna run a jiu-jitsu clinic on this guy. Now, mind you, I had only really been training jiu-jitsu. I trained for 4 months on my first deployment, 6 months on my second, with no instructor, just a bunch of guys rolling. And then I had only trained for about 5 or 6 months at an actual gym. And again, it's all no gi. So I had never put a gi on before. And I think I put a gi on like one day. And I'm like, fuck this gi. This gi sucks. And I go out there, and man, I hate watching that fight because I could have finished him with like 10 arm bars. I could have choked him out like 6 times, but I just didn't know what I was doing. And like I watched it a month ago for some reason because I was looking at some of my old fights. I'm like, oh God. I was like, oh, you're terrible. You know, like everyone watches videos when you first started. It's like, God, I was so bad. And I ended up winning that fight by decision. And then shortly after that, my wife at the time decided that it took too much time away from home, so she made me quit. So luckily for me, I deployed like a month later to Iraq, and there was a full-on jiu-jitsu gym at Balad Air Base. I was just like, this is awesome. So it was like a huge MMA room. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to start jiu-jitsu classes again. And so I started another jiu-jitsu program, and the highest rank, we had one blue belt that would come occasionally, and the rest were all white belts. So I was teaching jiu-jitsu for about 6 months as a white belt, not knowing what the fuck I was doing. And we would do our own little tournaments here and there, and you know, it was a lot of fun, and I just really enjoyed it. So I mean, I started jiu-jitsu like teaching jiu-jitsu, right? And again, for all the black belts out there, calm down, right? We didn't have anybody else there. I wasn't promoting people. I wasn't doing shit like that. We were just rolling, having a good time.
He said, I do what I can.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I get back from that deployment, and I had to stay home for a year because we had some pretty crazy shit happen at deployment. We got mortared every day, probably like 5 or 6 times a day. So we were getting hit constantly. And then we had army guy kill himself, and I was right there. So I go inside the room, and he had shot himself in the head, but he was still alive when I came to the room. So I just grabbed his hand, and I sat there with him while he died. And because of that, they essentially forced me to stay home for a year, which I was a deployment guy. I wanted to keep going. So when I got home, I mean, my ex said I couldn't, or my wife at the time said I couldn't train. So I would say I'm working late, and I would sneak to the gym and go train like 2 to 3 times a week. So I was kind of training here and there. And then I deployed again to Afghanistan, and that deployment was pretty rough because we were what's called QRF, the quick response force for the base. So anytime we got attacked, we would have to go out and try to find the guys. And then, we would work every day. We get 1 day off a month or something like that. So I was only training jujitsu I think I trained maybe 30 times in 6 months. And it actually worked out kind of nice because none of my guys wanted to do it because I thought jujitsu's gay. Like, okay, dude, keep lifting weights. If me and you get in a fight, I'm going to fuck you up. Like, that's the way it works, man. So I ended up getting a couple Indian guys. There's a bunch of Indian workers on base. And one of them saw me training with a guy and he asked if he could join me. And I'm like, yeah, of course. And he didn't speak very good English. So it got me really good at explaining with like hand motions. And I got some of these guys were actually doing pretty good by the time we stopped. But like I said, I only trained like maybe 30 times in 6 months. I got back from that deployment in 2012, and me and my ex were going through a divorce. She moved back to Minnesota, and I trained maybe 20, 30 times that year. And then I got back, and we ended up getting back together because she was pregnant with my second kid. So I figured it'd be the right thing to do to try to patch up the relationship. And I told her, I'm like, I'm training jujitsu. I was like, I can't not do something. So I started just doing tournaments, like not training at all. But I won like 6 tournaments in a row as a white belt in the Nogi division. And it got to the point where I'm like, I need to actually start training. I was like, because I feel like a sandbagger, just tapping all these white belts out when I've been training for, realistically, I've been training for 6 years, but there was only a total of maybe 2 years, like combined training. And so I went to a gym in 2014. My buddy Paul said, hey, I know an Air Force vet that runs a gym, and it was called Trax BJJ. And my jiu-jitsu coach named Mark Mortensen, he's like a father to me, man. Like this guy he's been there for me more than anyone ever has. And, he's not just my coach. He's one of my best friends. And I was actually, he got married 3 years ago. And before the wedding, he called me up. He's like, hey man, how hard is it to get to be an ordained minister? I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm not, I try not to talk about my religion, but I don't follow religion. I don't believe in God or anything like that. Now, I tell people all the time, my lack of belief does not negate yours. I don't judge people for what they believe. I think everyone should just be happy. As long as you're living a good life, helping people out, you're doing the right thing. I don't care what you believe in. But so I looked into it and I became an ordained minister so I could marry him and his wife. And so I performed at his wedding. And then I've done 2 other weddings now since then, which is hilarious to me. I don't know why anyone want me to do their wedding, but anyway, so we start training. And I got 2 stripes on my first promotion, like 3 months into training. And then 3 months later, I got my blue belt. And this was all gi. So I had just started in a gi, brand new in 2014. But I was really good at grappling. That's the only thing I was good at. But then I'm getting choked out left and right because I don't understand the grips. And I was just like, this is so frustrating to me. So it's like I was starting all over again. So I kept winning tournaments left and right. And I think I have all my records and stuff because I like to keep count. And at that time, I think I had like 9 gold medals as a first place for white belt. So he promoted me to blue. And man, I got that blue belt slump, man. Like second place, second place, second place, second place. Like my first 6 tournaments as a blue belt. I'm like, fuck. Like, what happened? So it's just a different level, And then the point in my life where it took a pretty drastic spill. I talk about this very openly. I am a motivational speaker, so I do these speeches quite a bit. But in 2015, I found out that my youngest daughter was autistic. And
Okay.
I had issues with alcoholism because of the military. I mean, anytime anything happens in the military, you drink, right? Somebody's
Right.
deploying, you go drink. Somebody gets home, you go drink. Somebody's getting married, you go drink. That's all we did. So when I got out, I was polishing off a bottle of Jameson like every other day. And I thought it was normal, but I'm sitting down in my basement by myself drinking, just looking at Facebook and fucking tinkering around in the garage, and I didn't realize I had an issue. So I had slowed down drinking in 2014 because I showed up one day and someone's like, "Are you drunk?" And I'm like, "No." I was like, "I drank last night." Like, dude, you smell like a fucking brewery. And I'd slowed down drinking a little bit. But in 2015, my marriage was going to shit. We should have never gotten back together. It was a toxic relationship, between the both of us. It wasn't just her, just me.
Mm-hmm.
And, I started looking through her phone and I found out that she was cheating on me again. I'm not an angel, right? When I first got out, I was working downtown. I was a bouncer. So, I mean, I was doing what bouncers do, being a
Right.
shithead. And this was a pretty dark moment in my life where I just didn't know who the fuck I was. And so after I found out she was cheating on me again, I put a gun to my head and I pulled the trigger. And lucky for me, the gun didn't go off. And I sat there for quite some time trying to debate, like, if I was going to try it again, because there's no way that gun's not going to go off twice.
Right.
And I was up in the boundary waters in northern Minnesota. And so I got pissed and I shot all 19 rounds off into the lake. And then I got pissed off that the gun worked. I was like, son of a bitch. So I was 14 miles into the woods, so there's no cell phone service. So I kayaked back because I didn't bring any food with me because the plan was to kill myself.
Right.
And so I get back and I go to this bar called the Sawmill up in northern Minnesota and I eat a burger. I was like, fuck, like, this is so good, man. Because I hadn't eaten in like 4 days. I was just eating like fish and shit like that. So I call my jiu-jitsu coach and I didn't tell him what happened. For the longest time, I didn't tell anybody what I did. But I knew he was going to Brazil to get his black belt. And because our affiliate is in Curitiba through DNA Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay.
He was under Gracie Baja for quite some time. I don't remember who his coach is. I should probably know this, but I'm not great on the lineage part. So I go down to Brazil and we have a blast, dude. I get to train jiu-jitsu like literally 6 times a day for a full week. I'm training with like legit Brazilian like champions, and I was doing pretty good against all these guys. And I got back and decided, you know what? I want to fight MMA again. And my second call after I called Mark was to my wife and told her, "Hey, we're getting a divorce. I can't do this anymore. This is a shit relationship. We both need to move on." So I was like, you know what? I'm going to fight MMA again. She's the reason why I had to quit. I'm going to get back into it. So 3 months later, I took a fight and I told Mark, I am going to be the best jiu-jitsu MMA fighter in Minnesota. I was like, I'm going to choke out and tap out every single one of my opponents. So we go in there and I fight this guy named Raul Rodriguez. And it was at 170 and he was a short, fat guy. So I had to be careful because his center of gravity is much lower. So the round starts off and we go to set up and I go to kick him in the head, but he ducks under it, this little midget. And I spin around and he grabs me and suplexes me down on the mat. And we fight for a minute on the ground. We get up and I hit him with one really good uppercut. One thing I was really good at in MMA was dirty boxing. I was really good at close-up punching. Hit him with an uppercut and I split his head open. He's got like a Harry Potter scar on his head now. And he goes to get up and I see blood all over his face. And so I go in for the kill. And I go to kick him again. This motherfucker ducks under my kick. He grabs me, suplexes me, but I wind up on his back. And I have a specific armbar setup that I do. We call it the double shrimp armbar. And the way you grab it is you start on top on his back. He was in turtle. I was on top, and I grabbed his arm, and I rotated with his arm. And if he doesn't do a front flip, it literally will rip the shoulder out of the socket. So I roll. He didn't roll immediately, and I tore his shoulder. I could hear it. And he screamed. He rolls forward, and then I cranked the armbar and I snapped his elbow. So I ripped his rotator cuff. I snapped his elbow, and then you could see his skull in his head. Like it was like an 1.5 inch cut on his head, and he tapped out in a minute. It was 1 minute and 13 seconds, and it would just lit the fire for MMA again, man. So long story short, I keep fighting MMA. Broke my neck in 2016. I got caught in a head and arm choke. And I jumped and spun out of it, but my body turned, but my neck didn't. So I twisted 2 vertebrae in my neck, and the disc popped out and pinched off my C6 nerve. And I lost like 1.5 inches of mass on my right bicep because of the atrophy. And I ended up getting surgery, and they said, "You're never going to fight again." And they're like, this is going to be an 18-month recovery. I'm like, fucking watch me. I was like, I'm going to fight again this year. And they're like, no, you're not. Like, people don't just come back from this. I'm like, yes, I do. Watch me. And at this time, I started diving into Buddhism. I'm not a Buddhist. I swear too much, and I like meat. Like, you're not going to see me in a robe anytime soon. But I like the philosophy of it, right? Just,
Yeah.
Having the right mindset, using the right speak, treating people properly, treating people with love instead of anger. And I had a lot of anger inside of me still. And I started meditating a lot. And then I dove into epigenetics. There's a guy named Dr. Bruce Lipton and then Dr. Joe Dispenza. They're like the godfathers of epigenetics. And if you dig more into it, epigenetics is essentially the science behind Buddhism. So I started tying all that together, and a lot of it has to do with the biology of belief, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you know what a hypochondriac is? It's
I've
a
heard.
person who literally thinks themselves sick. They always think they're sick, and they're always sick because it's
Okay.
the mindset, right? Why can't there be an opposite side of that? And so I started meditating every day, focusing on my neck. And I started reading books on like spinal injuries and repairs and like how does it heal, stuff like that. And I started focusing intently on that. And then I got the surgery. And then I started focusing on specific drills just to make your neck stronger. So I go to the gym every day. About a week and a half, I was stuck in bed. After that, I went to the gym and started doing exercises every day, like to the point where my neck hurt. And about a month and a half after my surgery, the staples that were in my neck, they were like grinding on my spine. They were driving me nuts. So I ripped them out with pliers. So
Jeez, man.
I went into the doctor and they went to take out my staples and do my initial checkup to see how I'm healing. The doctor comes back in, he goes, "What did you do?" I'm like, "Oh no, what did I do?" And he's like, "No, like you're healed." He's like, "I've never seen somebody recover this quickly." I'm like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Can I start fighting again?" He's like, "I don't want to say yes, but," he's like, "You're healed." And I'm like, "Fuck yeah, let's go." So I go back into the gym a month and a half after training. I take a fight 4 months after my surgery, and I come back and I win fight of the night. Me and this guy beat the brakes off each other for 3 rounds, man. And it got to the point where in the second round, this guy hit so hard. Like, I've never been hit harder in my life. The very first exchange in the fight, he hits me with overhand right, hits me with his 2 front knuckles in my forehead. I still have his knuckle indents in my skull. Like, it was bad, dude. And I smiled at him and I was just like, oh shit, here we go. Because I was the psychopath that when I fought, I would smile a lot and I was always laughing. My fight name was Princess. So it's a long story with that one. I got really drunk in Brazil one night. We'll just leave it at that. They started calling me Princess. But my coach told me if I don't go in as my fight name as Princess, he's not going to corner me. I'm like, "You son of a bitch, really?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "It's hilarious, right? It's going to confuse people, and it's not like Killer and Punisher and all these stupid fucking names that people have." And so when they announced me as Princess, I could hear everyone go, "What? Like,
What?
what the fuck?" And so the third round, in the second round, guy's just beating the shit out of me, right? And I'm throwing some pretty good exchanges too. I was a pretty good boxer. And it got to the point where I'm just tired of getting hit. So I pulled guard. And everyone's like, "What are you doing?" Because that's not a great position to be in fucking MMA fight. But I swept him right away. And I took mount and I just started beating the fuck out of him. And he rolled over and I took his back and I put him in a rear naked choke against the fence, but the bell rang. I'm like, damn it. So the third round starts. Half the crowd is cheering Yama, half the crowd is cheering Princess, and I'm just smiling. I was like, this is so goofy. And I'm like, what are we doing right now? So the bell rings and we high five each other. And I'm like, hey, let's knock each other out. And he's like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? And so we square up and he comes at me and I hit him with a retreating left hook and he drops. I jump on his back and I sink in a rear naked choke. And I sunk this thing in deep, man. And I start squeezing. And I look down, and I see blood squirting out of his face. And I'm like, yeah, I got him. And I was like, please tap, please tap, please tap. And he tapped, and I jumped up on the cage, and I was just screaming. And that was like my big comeback because I was never supposed to fight again.
Right.
So that was fucking beautiful, man. And then I got a title shot a few months later. I ended up losing to the number 1 ranked welterweight in the country I shouldn't have taken that fight, but I'm like, fuck it. What if I win? You know?
Right.
So I won the first round. He took me down twice, but I was landing shots left and right, and I'm a very unorthodox fighter. A lot of my coaches got irritated with me because I would stand weird and I would hit weird and I would never do anything proper, but it worked just because like nobody could read me because I'm not doing anything right. So I surprised the guy, but the problem was I had a really bad weight cut that day and I was super bloated the day of the fight and I just felt like shit. The night before I was eating a cheeseburger and I got through like half of it and realized that it was like red, like it was way undercooked. But I said, fuck it. And I ate the whole thing. And so the next day, in the first round, towards the end of the round, he spears me and I shit my pants. Like, not just luckily it was solid and I squeezed my butt cheeks together just to make sure it didn't come out. And I always wear spandex, so it was stuck in there. So at the end of the first round, I sit down on the stool and I go to my coach, like, I shit my pants. He's like, no, you're doing goes like, no, I shit in my pants. There's poop in my pants right now. And he's like, oh shit. And I was like, what do I do? He's like, I don't know. Don't mount him. I was like, fuck. So like, okay. So that second round, I'm just squeezing my ass so I don't shit all over the floor. And he spears me again, and I just go, and you could hear it. And I'm like, oh no. So he takes me down and he gets me on side control. And I don't like people on my side control. So I just put my feet down and he took mount right away. And I swept him right away because I have pretty good sweeps for mount. Swept him right away, but I left my arm up and he caught me and I had an arm choke. So I lost the match and everyone's trying to talk to me after. I was like, I got to go to the hotel room. I'll be right back. And they're like, no, we got to go meet. I was like, I will be right back. So I run across the street. I go to change and it was a fucking massacre, dude. It was gross. So I get cleaned up, come back, and everyone's like, dude, where did you go? I'm like, don't worry about it. We'll talk about it another time. So I ended up going to another gym, doing some Muay Thai fights out of Spartan. And the first Muay Thai match I had, it was so uneven. This was this guy's first ever fight. And at this time, I had 3 boxing matches. I think I had 4 MMA fights. So this was my first Muay Thai fight, but this was like my 7th fight.
Right.
And I think I landed it was like 148 punches. It was somewhere around like 76 kicks and like 6 elbows. And I think he landed like overall 18 hits. I beat the shit out of this guy and I kind of felt bad. And I go down to the TBAs. Have you ever heard of that? The Thai Boxing Association tournament in Iowa. It's the biggest amateur Muay Thai tournament in the world. I should not have gone. I was not ready, dude. I got knocked out literally in 10 seconds. And for like 2 years, I thought that it was just 1 round. And the fight came up on a Facebook memory and I started watching it. And I'm like, oh, this was a 2-round fight? I don't remember the whole second round, dude. Like, I thought I got knocked out and it was done.
Wow.
So, yeah, dude, it was wild. So I quit for like 6 months, came back to another gym, did another MMA fight. I won that fight in 1 minute and 10 seconds with an armbar. And then I fought another guy in 2018. I was the number 5 welterweight in Minnesota. So I was like, one more good fight, I'm going pro. And I fought a guy named Joey Hart. He was like 6'4", skinny kid, but we fought at 170. I could not get inside on this guy, man. Every time I'd go to shoot in, he'd hit me in the face and I just started backing up. So I started kicking his legs to try to take him down. And I started taking out his legs and I took him down twice in the first round. And then the second round, I go out there and I just start picking his calves apart because my goal was to rip the muscle off his legs. And then I go to kick. He turns his knee in and the top of my foot smacks right on the top of his knee and I shatter my foot. So I step down and I wince. He hits me with an uppercut, knocks me the fuck out. And after that, I decided I was done completely. I decided to quit martial arts altogether. And I started the nonprofit in 2019. And about 4 or 5 months into the nonprofit, I decided, you know what am I doing? I need to start adding jujitsu as another way to help veterans overcome PTSD. So I call Mark up, and I hadn't trained with Mark in 2 years. And this is how good of a person this guy is. He's like, dude, we're opening up a new gym. I want you to come look at the spot. I'm like, all right. So I go down there and I see it and I see his vision and I'm like, can I come back? He's like, yeah, dumbass. He's like, you could have come back anytime you want. He's like, this is your gym. This is your home. And I was like, all right. So I gave him a hug and like this dude, seriously, like, even though I left his gym, he still would call me like every 2-3 months, just check up on me, not to ask me to come back, but just to check on me, see how I'm doing. And he's always been the guy that's always been there for me, always checking up on me. And, when I finally came back, like everybody at the gym was like, hey, they were all so excited to see me. And I'm like, I thought you guys all hated me, you know, but every fight I had outside of that gym, almost nobody from that gym would show up, but all the guys from tracks would show up to my fight still, even though I wasn't fighting on a tracks. Like these guys still supported me and it's my family, man. Like now that I'm back, Mark did a bunch of vinyls on the door. And everyone knows I'm a goofball. Like when I'm in the gym, I'm always laughing. I'm always smiling. I'm always talking shit, making people laugh. I'm encouraging the white belts. It's just, I'm doing all the shit that I wish people would have done for me,
Mhm.
And one day he takes a photo. A buddy of mine got me a t-shirt. It was a picture of Deadpool riding on a kitten holding ice cream cones with like flowers and rainbows and shit. It was just a goofy shirt. And I had it underneath my gi one day and Mark goes to take a picture and I pull it open. I go, ah, I make like a mean face and I pull open my gi and it's this fucking Deadpool riding a kitten. And he put that when you walk through the door of our gym, it's a full-size picture of me wearing that fucking t-shirt going like this. It's just like, dude, why would you put that on the gym door? He's like, look, man. He's like, one, I love you. He's like, two, he's like, you are the face of this gym, whether you want to believe it or not. He's like, everyone loves seeing you in here. Everyone loves rolling with you. You're not a dick. You don't crush white belts. You let them work. He's like, you teach all the new people when they come in. Like, this is your gym, you know? And that's why I'd never leave that gym. Like, I'm dedicated 100%. And then I got my brown belt back in January and I started teaching Sunday fundamental classes. So since then, I've had 103 jiu-jitsu matches. I lost count of how many medals I have. I was digging through my truck the other day and I found a medal in the back. I'm like, oh, nice. Like, throw this in the box, I guess. I don't know where any of my medals are anymore, but it's just jiu-jitsu's been the one consistent in my life. It taught me how to be a man. It gave me confidence. It brought me to the point where I could communicate with people and not feel like that little child, getting beat up by his stepdad. And it's almost like I created this champion to take care of the little kid inside of me. And, now I'm one of the nicest guys in the world that can kick your ass. So I kind of like it.
I know, right? That's the best way to be.
Well, it's crazy. Like the more you train jiu-jitsu, the less violent you become.
The less violent you get. Yep.
You realize like that little guy over there could fuck me up. I don't know, because maybe he knows more than I do. You get all those guys like, well, I see red when I fight. It's like, no, you don't. You don't know what you're doing. Like the majority of men don't realize how worthless you're going to be in an MMA fight or in a street fight because, a blue belt who's trained for 2-3 years could most likely beat the shit out of any non-trained person. The problem with jiu-jitsu guys is they get a little too confident sometimes. They're like, yeah, on a street fight, I just take them down. Like, yeah, but you're going to get hit. You got to understand, like, you need to be able to defend yourself. So I tell jiu-jitsu guys all the time, you should also be training Muay Thai. You should also be training boxing, just even once a month, once a week, just do some sort of ulterior motive. Some other martial art that involves striking. Because the false sense of security that a lot of jiu-jitsu guys get that don't train any other striking martial art, they'd be really surprised if they get in a real fight and they realize, oh, I can get hit. Like there's a whole nother aspect of fighting, but personally, I tell people all the time, I think jiu-jitsu is one of the best martial arts for anybody, for self-defense. It's a fantastic martial art. And I get guys asking me all the time, like, what's the first thing you would do in a street fight? I was like, run away. And they're like, why?
Fight?
I was like, yeah, I don't want to fight. What if that dude pulls out a knife or a gun? I'm not going to get shot. Fuck that.
Right.
I got nothing to prove, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. Like you said, like the more you train, the less you feel, the less you feel violent. And I get asked that, like, have you ever, used in the street? No. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't feel the need to.
No, there's no point, man. Like the last street fight that I got into was 2014. And long story short, dude opened up his door and hit my friend's car and he asked for his insurance. And the guy yelled at him, told him, no, get back in your car. And my friend had never been in a fight before. He literally just sat down in his car. I'm like,
Ah.
all right. So I walk over. I'm like, dude, just give me your insurance information. This doesn't have to be a big deal. And he starts yelling at me. The driver started yelling at me. I'm like, okay. So I just go in the back. I take a picture of his license plate. And as I'm taking the picture, he hits in reverse and hits me with his car. And so I get up and I Hulk smash his trunk. I'm like, dude, you're fucking with the wrong guy. Don't do it again. Not thinking he'd do it again, I go to take a picture of his license plate. He hits me again, but I go flying like 10 feet because he hits me pretty hard. And then he hits my car. So I walk over and I punch through his window. I shatter his window. I just destroyed my hand. But I hit him in the face. I unlock the door, pull my hand out. I open it up and I just hit him like 10 times. And I feel bad. Like I think about it now. He's probably some fucking college kid, didn't know what he was doing. And like I'm a fucking MMA fighter, you know, like I felt pretty terrible about this. But he hit me with his car, you know, like that's
I mean,
grounds
that's
for an
more.
ass beating.
That's asking for it. That's asking.
Yeah, yeah. You know, afterwards I told my buddy, I was like, get in your car, let's go. And then my cousin got in the car. After I knocked this dude out, I look up and my cousin was squaring up with the guy's friend, and I'm like, I slide over the hood of the car, Dukes of Hazzard style. I'm like, hey, you're next, motherfucker. And I'm bleeding everywhere. I was like, oh, by the way, your friend's dead in the car. If you don't want to look like him, you better get in the car and leave. And he's like, oh, dude. I was like, yeah, let's go. So we drive away. I broke my hand and I have cuts all over my hand from it. And I got that boxer's fracture. That snapped I don't have a knuckle anymore. But
Oh,
I tell people all the time, like, I'm the last person you're going to see fighting. But you hit me with your car. I mean, I'm going to
twice.
snap.
Right.
There's been plenty other
how
times
could it
where
be
I could have
avoided?
gotten. Yeah, exactly. Like, there's been times where, like, I was out with my girlfriend, and I told her from the beginning, like, if anyone ever says anything mean to you or says anything mean to me or, like, a fight breaks out, we're just leaving.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna sit and defend your honor because I know I can beat the shit out of that guy likely. What's the point?
Right.
You know? I was like, "We just leave." So there was a time where, you know, a guy had said something to her, and I looked at him, I was like, "Hey, man, like, watch yourself. You're disrespecting a woman. Don't do that." And he gets in my face, and I was like, "Hey, we're leaving. Let's go." And I start walking out, and he's calling me a bitch, calling me a pussy, all this shit, and then we just keep walking, get in the car, and drive away. And she's like, "Why didn't you hit that guy?" I'm like, "What does that prove? I'm gonna
Right.
knock out a drunk guy with probably no training at all? That proves nothing." I was like,
Right.
"Plus, then the law gets involved, and I don't want to deal with that. It's not worth it."
Yeah. We had
It's really
a incident like that a few years back.
yeah,
Me and my wife was out, and we're at this club. We're just chilling, and a guy walks over to us, and he's already drunk,
yeah,
and he kind of bumps me, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, it's fine. So I turn
yeah,
back, and he's like, kept trying to talk to me. I'm like,
yeah,
all right, dude. Like, we got it. It's fine.
yeah,
It's no big deal. Blah blah. Blah. So then he leaves, come back, and he's like, are you guys you guys from here? I'm like, yeah. Oh yeah. Da, 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 da. I'm like, all right, dude. I'm trying to enjoy time with out.
yeah,
Whatever. So at this point, my wife is getting really, really uncomfortable. So I was like, all right, let's pay for our drinks and we're gonna leave. So he was standing, like, it was crowded. So he was standing by the door. It was at the waitress, and then it was like us. So I'm trying to like go around him. So my wife kind of like speeds off. So I'm leaving, and he's like, hey man, where you going? I'm like, have a nice day. And he's like trying to grab my shoulder and everything. I'm like, all right, look, don't touch me. I'm not trying to get, take that there. Just have a nice day. Oh, let me buy you a drink and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, dude. So he's like
jeez,
walking, and he's at this point, he's like blocking me from the door. So my wife is looking at me because she knows it's just like a subconscious thing. If I'm talking to someone, like if me and you are talking, right?
yeah,
And if someone I don't know comes up, I blade myself off towards them. I don't know what it is, like instinct or whatever, but
yeah,
I'm always like mentally prepared or whatever. So ironically, the guy that was sitting at the bar was the bouncer, big
Okay.
muscle head dude, right? So he turns, he has on a Gracie shirt.
Oh, nice.
So he looks and he stands up, he looks at me, I do this, and he's like, and turns back around. so,
It's so funny that this, for some reason, has become a jiu-jitsu symbol. It just makes it's so goofy.
I was like, oh, he was like, it turns back around. So we leave out. My wife was like, what was wrong with that guy? I was like, I don't know. But I'm like chuckling to myself. And she's like, what's so funny? I was like, oh no, we were good regardless. And I was like, she's like, why? How do you figure? I was like, the guy that was sitting at the bar, he does jujitsu.
Yeah.
And she was like, how do you know? I was like, you just gotta pay attention, man. you gotta put your jitsu antennas up, man. But
something that I realized, man, like with the veteran community, we're very if you see somebody wearing an Air Force shirt, Army shirt, Marine shirt, whatever, we see that and we're brothers, right? That's the way it works. And it is the same thing in the jiu-jitsu community.
Same with jiu-jitsu.
Bro, I was walking downtown and I was wearing a We Defy shirt. And guy came up to me and was like, hey, where do you train? I was like, oh, Tracks BJJ. We start bullshitting, starting a conversation. We exchange information and everything like that. And I was like, yeah, come down and train. Like a week later, he came down and trained with us. And my buddy is like, dude, do you know that guy? I'm like, no, he trains jiu-jitsu though, so he's a good dude. So, we've all met shitheads in jiu-jitsu, and there's a couple bad apples, but for the most part, dude, like most guys that train jiu-jitsu are pretty chill.
Chill, yeah.
Like in 2021, I drove around the country for 45 days and I filmed a documentary called PTSD versus Jiu-Jitsu. And unfortunately, it's not edited yet. We'll get there eventually. But we trained with probably 3,000 people in 45 days, man. It was amazing. It was the best. Dude, it was so cool. Like, you go in there, I'm training with like 2nd degree, 3rd degree, 4th degree black belts. And I come in and they're just like, hey, man, come on. Like, everyone's so chill. Like, there was only like 1 or 2 gyms where I walked into some guys that were just, pumping their chest, and brown belts were like, oh, this guy think he's going to come in here in this gym. It's like, dude, that's not what it's about. Like, I'm just coming in to train. That's it. Like, I'm the kind of guy where I will never ask a black belt to roll. I'll rarely ask a brown belt to roll. But like the purple belts and blue belts and stuff, I'll just go grab them, go roll. Because the way I see it is, like, I know some guys have an ego in gyms, right? That's a thing in jiu-jitsu. Some guys have egos in the gym. And, there was one point where I asked a black belt to roll, and he's like, it's like, why would I roll with you? And I'm like, seriously? This wasn't on this tour. This was back when I was a blue belt. And so it got me to that mindset where, like, okay, I don't want to be disrespectful, but on that tour, I think I rolled with like 45 black belts, man. And it's just so crazy when you see the evolution of jiu-jitsu, how different it is in the whole country. Because we started in Fargo, and because I'm from Minnesota, so we drove up to Fargo. We went to California, SoCal, like Texas, Florida, New York, Boston. I got to train with Joe Lozon at his gym on Memorial Day. It was awesome. But like all these guys, it's just so different everywhere you go. Like SoCal and Florida, all leg locks. That's all they do, right? Mostly no-gi leg locks. You get up to like you get into the center of the United States. It's all wrestling and grappling, right? Because you have like Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, South Dakota. That's big wrestling states, right? So a lot of
that's mecca wrestling states,
yeah. So their wrestling is amazing, and then you get up to New York, it's just very flashy, like a lot of really cool shit. Like Boston is just, if you know anything about Joe Lozon, like they grind hard as shit, and it's like a death match every single time you roll with some of those guys, And I'm the kind of guy, when I go into a gym, I'm very relaxed. I'm not an attacker. I'll let people take me down. I'll go on my back. I'll relax. And then I just kind of go at their level, right? So if it's a white belt, I'm not going to destroy a white belt. I'll let them get into positions where they're comfortable and we'll roll. I'll never let anyone tap me, though. Like, I tell all the white belts at our gym, I will never let you tap me. But the day that you do, I'll be the first one to high five you and hug you and celebrate with you, because I want you to earn it. You don't learn anything when people let you tap them. Like, there was a black belt, Chris Ruiz, motherfucker. we were rolling in California. I think it was uh, Santa Maria, BJJ. And we go in there and I choke him out. And I looked at him like, dude, don't do that. He's like, what? And I was like, you let me get that, man. I was like, don't do that to me. And then we kept rolling hard and it was a grind the whole time. And then Frank Belcora at Lancaster BJ. I don't remember the name of the gym. It's in Lancaster, California. This guy fucking destroyed me like it was a fucking pans match, dude. Like it was 5 minutes of just getting destroyed. He didn't let up at all. He gave me everything he got, and I was like, "Damn, dude, that was a rough roll, man." He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "That's how I roll with my students. That's why my students are good." I'm like, "Okay, I get it."
Yeah.
And then you get other guys at some smaller gyms where their black belts are a lot more relaxed and calm. And I've gotten to the point where when you're rolling in a gym, it doesn't really matter who you tap. Like I've tapped black belts, I've been tapped by white belts, shit like that. But like I tell a lot of my guys, a lot of those white belts that end up tapping me at my gym, they get a little inflated egos. And I have to remind them, like, listen, if this was a tournament, I would crush you. I would fucking destroy you. I would take you down. I would fucking put all my body weight on you and I would choke you till you can't see anything. Understand this. When you're training with higher belts at the gym, there's a good chance you're going to catch them, right? It's because we're working, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to put ourselves in bad situations. Like I test a lot of my new stuff on white belts and blue belts. And then I know if it works, if I can do it on purple, brown, black. For me, like the white belts are such a great, I love rolling with white belts because you still learn a lot, and if you're trying something new, you put yourself in a bad situation, like, it doesn't work. Now you have to learn how to escape out of that, so it's every belt level has something to add. And something I like to tell a lot of the white belts, every person in this gym has something to teach you. Even a brand new white belt could teach you something. I wouldn't have white belts like teaching class or anything like that, but at the same time, certain guys, everybody's body is different and everybody's life experience is going to go into jiu-jitsu. So even like the way that you grip, if you're going to grip like this, if you're going to grip like this, it just, the small things are going to be different for everybody. So the more and more I roll with different people, like I know you had expressed wanting to come train with a bunch of people from the different podcasts and stuff. If you're ever in Minnesota, you're more than welcome to come train at tracks. Mark doesn't do drop-in fees. So like, especially if it's someone visiting, because of me, he doesn't charge anybody. But like we got some really cool people at the gym. Like we got a black belt that's like, he's like 5'6", maybe 140 pounds soaking wet. We got a black belt that's like a 210 pounds, about 6 feet tall. We got one that's, Mark, I make fun of him a lot because he looks like a potato. He's like just a big, thick, fucking hard dude. And he's like, I think he's like 5'10", about 250 pounds. So when he puts his weight on you, it's just like, God, I can't move. And I've gone against guys that are 230, 240 that can't pressure like that. But he's a second degree black belt. I believe he's supposed to be getting his third soon.
Nice.
So rolling with him, man, it's just like every time I go to one of his classes, I learn something new every single day. And then we have, like I said, we got 5 black belts at our gym. Right now we have 3 brown belts and then a bunch of purple, blue, and white. So it's nice
awesome
to get that. Yeah, it's a really good spread. And then I do open mats at other gyms all the time. I got a couple black belts that I train with pretty often. Fabio Morleski and Roland Larson. Those are 2 of my favorite guys. They're big ambassadors for the We Defy Foundation, and then they're big ambassadors for Warriors Next Adventure too. So anytime I go train with them, they don't charge me, even though I always offer, like, how much do you want? Because I don't know about you, but like when I travel, I always ask, like, hey, how much do you want for the drop-in fee? I don't ask like, is there a drop-in fee? Because you don't make any money off of Instagram post,
right.
And if I'm going to your gym, sucking in your knowledge, I want to pay for it, and I have the money for it too. But where are you at?
I'm in Detroit, Michigan.
Okay, nice. I am actually working on setting up some speeches up in the Detroit area. I got a bunch of friends that live up there too, so If I make it out
Nice.
there, man. What gym do you train at?
So we train at we have our own spot. Well, we partner with someone, but we have our own jiu-jitsu program. It's
Okay.
called we go by a gogi jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
Yeah, so we partner with this guy named Kurt who runs boombox kickboxing and martial arts. So
Nice.
he has a lot of unique looks on different martial arts. He's very, very knowledgeable guy. But yeah, we partnered with him last year to kind of like open up our own program.
Nice. Yeah. With Warriors Next Adventure, I do jiu-jitsu seminars a lot. So
Mhm.
whenever I do a jiu-jitsu seminar, I don't charge, right? Because I'm just a brown belt. I'm not going to charge people for a brown belt to come in and do a tournament or a seminar. But what we do is we bring like the Warriors Next Venture rash guards and gis. We sell those. The rash guards, we sell them for $40. The gis we sell for $120. Every gi that we sell, we get them for $43, which is a really good price. And so every gi that we sell, we give one gi to a veteran and then we sell two. So it helps us out a lot, but it also helps the cause too. So every time you buy a gi, a veteran gets a free one.
That's
Because our
dope.
goal is to get every veteran training jiu-jitsu. Because when it comes to mental health, like after my suicide attempt, I dove into jiu-jitsu, man. Like my whole life was jiu-jitsu. Eventually MMA too, but jiu-jitsu was always the focal point. And in every match, I would think, how am I going to beat this guy with jiu-jitsu? My striking, like I said, was always pretty good. My kicks were always really good, but it was always, how do I get them to the ground? That's all I
Mhm.
cared about. And there was a guy named Jake Clipp. He's a black belt out of, I think he's in Wisconsin in the Green Bay area, or he's in Illinois in the Chicago area, one of the two. But he was commentating my fight that I won fight of the night. And he said something. My mom was watching the stream and she's like, they were talking a lot about your jujitsu. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, they said that this guy definitely has the best jujitsu in Minnesota right now. When it comes to MMA, right? I was still a blue belt at the time, but none of the fighters were using jujitsu. It was almost all just brawls. That's all they were
Mhm.
doing. And it's like there's something missing here and I want to highlight it. And so every opponent I win against, I greatly dominated them on the ground. The only guy that kind of had a one up on me was Cam in the title fight because he was a wrestler and wrestlers tend to be my nemesis. You know,
Yeah.
the control, man, they're just so much better. We just had a wrestler start training with us now and he's a white belt. And I told him we are rolling every day. I was like, you are going to be my main training partner because, you know, when it comes to grappling, I still one up him, but his takedowns, man, God, this dude can take me down whenever he wants. And it's so annoying that he's a white belt brand new and he's just double leg, single leg, fucking fireman's carry. Whenever he wants to take me down, I'm going down.
Mhm.
And I'm not the kind of guy that's going to get mad and not roll with that guy. He's now my training partner. So anytime
Yeah.
I have somebody that's
Yeah.
better than me, I want to train with that guy. You know,
Mhm.
like when I travel, I'll let people choose, you know, because like a lot of times different gyms have different ways of like when we start rolling. I literally will just sit down and put my hand up. You know, anyone who wants to come roll, let's go. Um,
Yeah.
you know, there's always a couple guys that I try to stay away from depending on like what's going on because my neck, I still have issues. The disc pops out on the left all the time, so my neck will lock up. So I try not to roll with like the really big dudes when I travel because they tend to want to beat the shit out of me.
Yeah.
But if someone asks me, I'm not going to say no.
Mhm.
So you're never really going to get better at jujitsu if you're only rolling with guys that you know you can beat. That's
Yeah.
kind of that's kind of weak if you ask me.
Yeah. I gotta to kind of backtrack on what you were saying about like when you travel to different gyms. It's crazy. I'm not gonna say no names. I'm not gonna go into much detail about it. Even though it was like kind of rude, but I still like to be respectable. I reached out to one gym, and I'm like, hey, my name is blah blah blah. We're affiliate, blah blah blah. I'm just wondering if you guys do drop-ins. He's like, no, we don't do that. And just like hung up. So I was like, okay, that was weird, but
Okay.
right. But then I end up meeting another guy a few weeks ago. He's affiliate of Joe Moera. And I'm like, hey dude, I actually introduced invited him on to the podcast. And then I was
Nice.
like, oh, he's in Canton. So he's like, oh, dude, you guys should come out and blah, blah, blah. So we're like, yeah, well, we'll show up. And, we did it, respected, very respectable. We after class, we like, hey, is a drop in? He's like, no, you guys are family, and you don't got to pay no drop in. So I was like, okay, well, at least let us help you clean the mats.
Yeah.
And he's like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, dude. I'm like, we this is how we are. But very cool guy. But it's very few and far between. I've met people where it's just like, I don't like you.
Yeah.
When it comes to jiu-jitsu, everybody I've ran into that does jiu-jitsu, I'm like, yeah, we're family now. I'm like a phone call away for you now. But some people, it's like maybe one or two where I was like, I don't like you.
I don't know why people wouldn't be, super opening and welcome, because you're running a business, like,
yeah.
Why are you going to be salty towards someone because they want to come train with you? You should be like, hell yeah, more the merrier. That never made sense to me. And I've run into a few guys, a few gyms that I will never go back to. Right? You couldn't force me to go back to those gyms because it just, they just seem like bullies. And I can handle rough rolls and everything, but you know what I'm talking about. There's a difference between rolling hard and being a dick. And you get guys that. One dude literally open hand slapped me, and I looked at him like, I mean, do you guys roll like that? Or he's like, no, you're just pissing me off. I'm like, we're done. I'm not going to roll with you anymore, because if this continues, I'm going to knock you the fuck out. And I was like, I'm not the kind of person that likes to fight, especially when I'm visiting a gym. So I went over to the coach, and I didn't fucking tattletale or anything like that. I'm like, man, some of your guys are not very respectful. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, oh, I mean, I just got bitch slapped, and the guy told me it's because it pissed him off. He's like, who was it? I was like, I'm not going to say who. I was like, that's not my deal. I'm just saying, like, it's kind of a bad look for a gym when you have guys coming in visiting and they're getting treated like that. And I'm like, not a big deal. I mean, I'll keep rolling. I'll keep chilling. I'm not going to leave a bad review or anything like that. And he's like, dude, I'm sorry. He's like, some of these guys, they just, they're still new. And some of them came from like bad childhoods and stuff. I was like, I mean, I did too, but it's no excuse to be physically hitting somebody.
Right. Just haul off and hit somebody for whatever reason.
Yeah. I mean, if I was in there sparring MMA, that's one thing, like, you want to put gloves on, let's go. But I don't know. It just that kind of mindset sometimes drives me nuts. But then you go up to like God, what gym was that? There's a gym in NorCal, in the what Santa Rosa, I think, area. I don't remember the name of the gym, but I go in there and like white belts are throwing heel hooks, and it's just left and right. Like literally 30 seconds into a roll, somebody heel hooked me. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, you don't have to throw that on so fucking hard. Like, relax, dude.
Relax,
like,
right.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm not somebody who's gonna get mad because someone tapped me, but like, if you're fucking heel hooking someone, calm the fuck down. You don't have to yank that shit right away. It was right at the beginning of my tour too. So I'm like, I got 30 more days that I got to be doing this. Like, calm down, dude. He's like, oh, maybe you should defend better. And I'm like, bro, I was like, listen, I could literally kick the living shit out of you. Just because you know some jiu-jitsu moves doesn't mean you know MMA. And I hate being that guy that puffs his chest and everything, but I was pissed off. And there's some things that I do where like I regret, like I regret talking shit to that guy. I should have just got up and walked away, but I was pissed off, man. It was just like, dude, you don't treat people like that, especially when they're visiting your gym, man.
That's so unnecessary.
I was like, if you're gonna heel hook me, fine, no big deal. I'll tap. And I'll be like, hey, good job. But when you grab that and you get an extra, like, who is that heavyweight?
I was just thinking about his name. I knew exactly where you're going.
Shit? God, but like that guy. It's one thing to put on a heel hook, but it's another thing to hold it and squeeze it and continue cranking it when they tap. And that's what this guy did to me. Like once I tapped, he held it. And I'm like, hey, fucker, let go. That just rubbed me the wrong way. But overall, I think there's only been one or two gyms that I visited where I'm just like, I'm not coming back here. Most gyms, most instructors, and most students are super welcoming. Like I trained down in Hawaii when I was there in early 2019, and I trained at 2 different gyms. And I go in there like, hey man, what's up? Let's go, let's roll. They're super nice, super chill. Pretty sure most of them were stoned, but we go in there and we start rolling. I'm like, these guys just turn into monsters like that, you know. And then afterwards they went out like, hey man, we're going surfing. You want to go surf? I was like, fuck yeah, let's go. So I ended up not surfing, but it was a lot of fun hanging out with those guys.
Like, you beat me up. Of course I want to go.
Yeah, I know, right? Do I have a choice? You just kicked the shit out of me. Like, yes, master. What do you want me to do? Like, but it's cool, man. Cause like, you know, we usually go out to lunch afterwards, and like, the guys from the Jiu-Jitsu Dummies podcast, you know, Milton and those guys.
Mm-hmm. I
So
heard of the podcast. Yeah.
yeah, I've been on Jiu-Jitsu Dummies like 4 times now. And, I'm supposed to be down there in April. I'm hoping to get down to Miami to hop on the show one day, but Drew, he goes by Drew Phoenix on Instagram. He runs a gym called God damn it, I'm gonna feel like such a jerk if I can't remember the name. A&M Jiu-Jitsu. It's in like this really big like sports complex. It's like a NFL sports complex. It's really cool looking, and he's got his own like UFC cage. He's got like a bunch of mats and everything, and like those guys are leg lock kings down there, man. Like Drew, when me and Drew start rolling, he's like, hey man, I got a foot fetish. I'm gonna rip your foot off. I'm like, it's kind of weird. I was like, I don't know whether to be turned on or freaked out. And he's like, what the fuck? And so he heel hooks me, and then I get him with my signature move, right? So what I teach when I travel, you start in guard, and I do a deep cross collar. That's usually my favorite grip to start. I do a deep cross, and then the other hand I grab the sleeve. I'll shrimp in, put a knee shield, and then I'll shrimp out the other way, drive my knee up on the shoulder, drive the shoulder down to the mat, and extend them out. So their arm is kind of like this. So they're either going to be here, and you could pull an Americana. I call it the slot machine. Just grab the slot machine, pull it back. Or if they extend their arm, what you do is you invert and you roll to the side. So your butt is now facing their head, or your butt is now, you know, at the top of their head.
Like a belly down armbar.
Yeah, but you're on your side. Right.
Okay.
So you're on your side and you're facing their feet. And then the only thing they can do is do a front flip. And then you roll with them. You slide your foot under their head. Your other foot comes over across the trachea. And it's like a 99% effective move. It works every time. I think I've gotten this move probably 40 times in jiu-jitsu matches. And it's kind of become like my signature. But when you do the initial double shrimp and you get down on their hands like this, you can pop up. You can get a lapel choke. You can do what we call the Rahn bar. It's named after me because I was fucking around one day and I did it. You drop your foot over their shoulder and you hook their arm, you roll them over their side, and then you pull an arm bar. Or you can take their back, or you can sweep them. So there's a bunch of different moves you can do from that position. And so I did that double shrimp technique to the arm bar on Drew, and I got him. I tapped Drew out, and Drew was a black belt, and I was a purple at the time. He's like, okay, everyone fucking stop. Right? Everyone stop. Nick is running a seminar. We're going to learn how he just tapped me out. He's like, this is some bullshit. And I was like, okay. So I did the seminar, and he recorded everything. I was like, how about this? I was like, if one of your students uses this in a tournament within the next 6 months, I'll pay you $100. And sure enough, a month later, he sends me a video of one of his students nailing this in a tournament. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, damn it, I gotta pay him $100.
Nah, right. Like, yes, but damn, I'm out of $100.
Yeah, but he's so humble, dude. Like he's one of my interviews for the PTSD documentary. And he's so humble. Like he talks a lot of shit, but he's a goofball, right? So he's not being mean. And so like the whole time we're rolling, we're both talking shit to each other. Like he's getting me, I'm getting him, he's getting me, it's just back and forth. And then when I get him with the specific move, like he asked me to train everybody on how to do it and everything. It's like, you know what? You are the exact kind of person that I love in jiu-jitsu. You know, when somebody taps me out like a white belt or a purple belt or whatever, when I'm traveling and it's something I haven't seen before, I'm like, hey, can you show me that? You know, what did you
all
just
the time? Do? All the
man.
time.
It's because like, you know, everyone kind of has their own curriculum, you know, even though like Gracie Baja kind of has a curriculum, every gym is still different. You know, everyone's doing little tiny techniques, little things differently. And so everywhere you train, you know, you'd be an idiot to not say, hey, show me what you just did, you know, and that's how you really evolve in jiu-jitsu. And after my tour, man, my jujitsu got so much better, man, because of the exposure that I got from all those other guys, and I mean, shit. Now I'm a brown belt, and the last 2 tournaments I've signed up for, the guys have backed out, so I still haven't competed as a brown belt. It's driving me nuts.
Ah, damn.
Yeah,
It
there
it'll
was one guy.
happen.
Yeah, like so now I'm 220 right now,
Mhm.
and at the end of 21, I ended up getting testicular cancer, and
Oh.
yeah, it sucked, man. Kind of dove me down in the mental health realm for a little bit, just because it's the C word,
Mhm.
And luckily with testicular cancer, they just cut it out and it didn't spread. So I didn't have to do chemo or anything like that, which is really nice. And I
Beautiful.
only had about a month off from the surgery. I was supposed to take 6 weeks off and I was training, I think, in 5 weeks because I'm just like, I'll just roll light. And,
Right, just
you know,
light, just light.
yeah, I only had my abdomen cut open, but I'll be all right. And so I started training a little bit more after that. And I had to refocus my jujitsu because a lot of things hurt. And I started to get fat. I got up to like 215 pounds, just fat. I still had some muscle, but I didn't look good. So I got my testosterone checked. And something that I'd like to say to every man out there, get your testosterone checked because they say the regular levels are 200 parts per mil to like 600 parts per mil. That's not good testosterone.
Mhm.
Right. So luckily for me at the VA, I can get my blood work checked once a quarter. So I can get my blood work four times a year. And so my testosterone was always about 810, 815, which is like athlete level testosterone. After my cancer, after I lost my left testicle, I dropped down to like 515. And I asked the VA, can I supplement testosterone? They said no, because you're still in the regular levels. I'm like, I'm not at my level though. I was like, all of
Right.
my blood work shows that my lowest point was like 750. And that's really high.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I'm tired all the time. I'm gaining weight. I look like shit. I have no libido at all. And so I ended up going to a TRT clinic and now I supplement 300 milligrams a week. And that puts me right at about 750 to 800 again. So now I'm sitting right at about 800. My energy levels have drastically spiked. My libido levels are up again. My girlfriend's not complaining about that.
At all.
Yeah. And it helps that I lift weights 4 days a week too. So I went from 215 down to 190 after I started taking testosterone, back up to 220 pounds within a year and a half. And I was putting in
Nice.
the work, right? I'm not 220 just because of testosterone. I lift weights like a motherfucker. And I train jiu-jitsu 3 to 4 times a week as well. So I'm extremely active. And I just recently started playing rugby too. So, I'm not big because of the testosterone. You're not going to take testosterone and start gaining muscle. You have to lift weights. Um, so there's always that thought of like cheating, right? But I'm literally
Mhm.
just supplementing to get back to where I was, right?
Right.
So now if I was taking 500 milligrams a week and I'm, jacked like Gordon Ryan, that's different because that guy's not
Then we
taking
gotta
300.
talk.
Yeah, he's not taking 300. I guarantee he's taking like 5 to 6. I guarantee his testosterone levels around like fucking 900 or, 1,000 or something like that, which
Yeah, I
is
believe it.
ridiculous. Yeah. So like for me it's just supplementing, getting back to where I was and you know, I feel better. My blood work is perfect. My cholesterol levels are perfect. My, literally everything in my blood panel is perfect. And, the VA keeps trying to tell me I need to stop taking testosterone. I'm like, fuck you guys, because I feel good, right? Because for them, they won't give you testosterone until you're below 200 parts per mil, which is like an 80-year-old man. Like that doesn't make sense to me. So
No.
the biggest thing that I tell all men, get your testosterone checked. I'm not telling everybody to get on testosterone, but get it checked, see where you're at. And then if need be, go to a TRT clinic. Your life will drastically change. There's a lot of ties to low testosterone in veterans after getting out of the military. Luckily for me, I stayed in shape and I kept working out and I kept my
Mhm.
testosterone levels. But most guys, especially that suffer with PTSD, tend to get low testosterone. And that's directly correlated with mental health issues such as suicidal thoughts, depression, and other negative aspects that come with all that shit. And now I run a 24/7 crisis line. something I started asking all of my guys who call the crisis line, what is your testosterone level at? And they're like, I don't know. Like, okay, the next thing you're going to do, you're going to set up a primary care appointment, figure out what your testosterone level is at. Not one of these guys have been above 300 parts per mil. Not one of them. Yeah. So now six veterans now are on testosterone now because of the conversations we've had, and they're doing it legally. They're not just ordering it from some guy in the street, fucking jabbing their ass with a needle. They're going to TRT clinics, and all of them are not struggling with mental health issues anymore. You know, they still have some shit here and there, but overall their mental health has drastically increased. So if you're a man struggling with any kind of mental health, whether it's depression, PTSD, get your testosterone levels checked, because that could drastically change your life.
Yeah. Yeah, gotta take care of yourself, man. It's, you know, as a man, you know, you don't get, I mean, just human in general, you're not getting any younger, but if you're going to be active, you want to make sure you're getting yourself properly checked out and make sure you're doing everything the right way.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like, you know, the TRT clinic it's expensive. It's like $150 a month, but what's your mental health and your life worth? You know,
Yeah,
$150 is not that bad.
You spend more on less.
Well, yeah. How many fucking bag or boxes of cigarettes are you buying a week? You know, like how much alcohol are you drinking? You know, you have the money for it. You know, and it's the same thing I tell people that say, well, jiu-jitsu is too expensive. Like, okay, how many fucking caramel latte coffees are you buying from Starbucks a week? You know, like that shit ain't good for you. That actually lowers testosterone, believe it or not. You know, and if you cut out all the bullshit, you start spending money on your health, you will drastically increase your life.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, man. I mean, yeah. That's, I mean, you said a lot of good stuff, man. And very awesome story. Very awesome
Thanks,
story.
man. I appreciate it. It's been a wild ride, dude. And you know,
I'm happy we got a chance to get a glimpse of it.
yeah, it's the tip of the iceberg, dude. There's I just watched a documentary that's getting put out about me and 3 other guys. We rowed a boat across the Atlantic Ocean back in 2022, and we were going from the Canary Islands in Spain to Antigua in the Caribbean. It's a 3,000-mile row in a 28-foot rowboat. And 16 days in, our boat capsized. These boats are supposed to auto-correct themselves. There was 43 other boats in the race, so it wasn't just us trying to row a boat across the ocean.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're not that crazy, still crazy, but not that bad. And we capsized and our boat didn't correct itself, and I was in the back cabin and I got knocked out, and I got a pretty bad brain injury from it. And we ended up getting out into the life raft and spent 18 hours in a life raft 900 miles off the coast of Africa in 40-foot swells. It was fucking insane. And we ended up getting rescued by a Dutch shipping vessel, and we spent 15 days aboard with them. I made friends with the chef right away because I'm like, I want to eat good while we're out here. And I'm quite the chef myself, so I went in and I helped cook almost every meal with them, and it was a lot of fun. But when I got back, I had migraines for like 45 days. One of the only people that called me just about every day was my coach, Mark.
I was just about to say
that. We need you back in here. So it was that really fucked up my mental health pretty bad. I didn't leave the house for almost 45 days. And eventually it got to the point where like I was in a hole, man, and I couldn't get out. It's because I wasn't letting myself get out. And so the first thing I ended up doing was finally going back into the gym, and I just sat there and hung out. And I did that probably 2 or 3 times. And, you know, the third time I came in with my gi and I started rolling, and slowly my mental health started getting better. You know, like jiu-jitsu is like the one place that is always there for me, man. It always brings me back, and it always reminds me, you know, like who I need to be. And it just it keeps me honest, man. You know, it's the one place in the world where you can't pretend because you're gonna get fucked up.
Yeah, no matter what, man, you're on the mats is always gonna tell the truth.
Absolutely, man. Well, I love what you're doing, man. I mean, these kind of podcasts are good, you know, for people that are interested in jiu-jitsu and, you know, just want to talk about it. But, you know, jiu-jitsu is so much more than just training. You know, it's a lifestyle. It completely changes your life.
Completely changes your life.
Absolutely, man. I recommend anybody start doing it.
We preach that all the time, man. Like jujitsu is for everybody. Some people don't believe it, but I believe it is for everybody. There is a place for everybody in jujitsu.
I agree 100%, man. We just had a guy start training with us, 74 years old.
Nice.
Yeah, and he's not bad. So he runs every day and he's pretty physically fit, and he comes in like 2 days a week and he works, man. No excuses. No excuses.
All right, Nick, we got to bring it home, man. I got to get ready for class.
All right, brother.
But before you leave, man, we ask everybody that comes on the show this question. Well, you roll with a lot of people and, probably some big names as well. But if there is 3 people that you would love to get a chance to roll with.
Oh, man. So I met Dean Lister back in during COVID. I flew out to California. I did like an underground jiu-jitsu tournament. It's called Money on the Mats with Jeff Glover. And it was at the Hells Angels clubhouse. It was awesome, dude. And I got to sit next to Chris Lieben, and I was actually coaching a guy against Chris Lieben, which was pretty sweet. And so I met Dean Lister, and I was supposed to go roll with Dean Lister during the tour, but it ended up not working out. So Dean Lister is one of them. My goal is in the next year, I started doing stand-up comedy, and my goal is to spend a week down in Austin doing comedy, but I intend to go roll with Tim Kennedy. Just because I love who the guy is as a person. He's like a famous veteran, but his jiu-jitsu is amazing. He's a killer. So I'd say Dean Lister, Tim Kennedy, and I would absolutely love to roll with Renzo Gracie too. I went to his gym when I was in New York and he wasn't there. I'm like, damn it, so I'm gonna get in there eventually.
Like, go get him. I'll wait.
I mean, he's gonna destroy me, but hey, whatever. How cool would it be to roll with a legend like that?
Of course, that's everybody's bucket list to roll with him.
Yeah, man. I did get to roll with Joe Lozon in Iraq in 2008. He came out to do he got to do a USO tour. So I got to roll with him, Heath Herring, and Jorge Rivera. And then on my tour, I got a call from a guy that said, "Hey, man, what are you going to be doing on Memorial Day?" I was like, "Well, I'll be in Boston. I'm looking for a gym." He's like, "Dude, come to my gym." I was like, "Well, we were supposed to go roll with Joe Lozon, but because of COVID, it's closed." He's like, "Dude, I'm Joe Lozon's Muay Thai instructor. Like, come to our gym." So I got to go back and I got to roll with Joe Lozon. God, that was like 15 years after we had first rolled. And he only tapped me 6 times in 5 minutes. So I'm pretty proud of that.
You're right. Only 6 times.
I kind of survived, I was happy. His jiu-jitsu though, man, if anyone gets a chance to roll with Joe Lozon, go out to Boston and get some rolls in. Such a nice guy. We sat there and ate hamburgers and shit and hung out afterwards and talked about the UFC. And, I've been very lucky to roll with a lot of dudes, but there's a lot of guys that are still on my list.
Right. All right, Nick, man. Unless you got any questions for me, man, you said a lot. I know you mentioned your Warrior Next Adventure and everything that you got going on, but if you want to shout out anybody, your school, anything that you're doing, if you want to plug, man, the floor is all yours.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Tracks BJJ, man. That's the best gym in the cities, if you ask me, in Minnesota. I love it. Mark's a great dude. Go check out Warriors Next Adventure. We help vets with PTSD, suicide prevention. We run a 24/7 crisis line. If you go to warriorsnextadventure.com, you can donate or you can see what we're up to and, come out and join us. Feel free to come train with me anytime out at Tracks BJJ. I travel a lot. So, just keep an eye on the calendar and see where I'm going to be and, let's get on the mats together.
For sure, man. If I can start, once I start traveling, man, I'll definitely let you know if I'm in that area.
Dude, it's only like 14-hour drive to Minnesota, man. We got a lot of cool shit going on. So my dispensary opens April 1st too. So we can come down there and check out the comedy room and, head out and do some jujitsu.
Sounds good, my brother.
All right, man. Good talking to you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, that's the end of today's episode. I would love to thank Nick one more time for coming on the show and bless us with his jiu-jitsu knowledge. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please go and follow our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube page to stay up to date on all future episodes. This has been Talk Your Jits podcast. Keep rolling, keep grinding, and remember, long live jiu-jitsu. Have a great day.